Welcome student for today's lecture, and in this today's lecture we are going to discuss about the object oriented programming concept, in which we are going to study about the difference between the object oriented programming and procedure oriented programming. I am Professor Pandit from Sndcoe Rc Yeola. So let's see what we are going to discuss in this lecture. First of all, we are going to discuss what do you mean by object oriented programming. Then we are going to discuss about the what do you mean by the procedure oriented programming, then the difference between object oriented programming and the procedure oriented programming, and later on we are going to discuss about the applications of object oriented programming. Okay, so let's start with the introduction about the procedure oriented programming. So what is what is the procedure oriented programming basically? Okay, so procedure, whenever the procedure name comes in mind, the procedure is nothing but the smallest unit of block, the code which we have written in the smallest unit of block. That means what? The set of instructions, a small set of code of block or set of instructions that we are combining together and we are writing a code block, that is nothing but the procedure or the function. Okay, the procedure and the functions are both the same one. Okay, so in procedure oriented programming we are concentrating on the procedure and functions only. Okay, the more significance is given to the procedure and the functions. Okay, and the another benefit or the another use of procedure oriented programming is what? In the one function we can call the another function also as well. Okay, means suppose for example you have declared the function a and you have written the task, some task in function a, and that task you have to use in function 2. So or the data which are in the function 1 that you have to use in the function 2, so you can use the function 1 data into the function 2 as well by calling that function into the function 2. Okay, that is a use of the procedure oriented programming. Okay, and in procedure oriented programming what we can do? In procedure oriented programming we can declare the local variable as well as the global variables. Local variable, now what do you mean by local variable and what do you mean by global variable? So let's study. The local variables are the variables which are declared inside the procedure, inside the function. Okay, the function having the variables, we say that that is a local variables. Okay, the scope of that variable, the scope of the data that we have stored in that particular variable is limited in that particular block. Okay, the data you cannot access, the permission to access the data outside that particular code block is not allowed if you have declared that variable as a local variable. Okay, and another type of variables are the global variables. What happens in global variables? In global variables you can access the data in any functions which are inside that program. Okay, say for example you have declared 2 or 3 functions in a single program, then you can access that global variable data into the all the functions that you have declared in that particular program. Okay, so that is the use of local variable and global variable in the procedure oriented programming. The next feature of the procedure oriented programming is what? A big task you can divide into the smaller one. Okay, there is that the task we have, say for example a big task is there, then that big task we have divided into the smaller units. Okay, and that smaller unit we can solve individually with the help of functions. Okay, then the disadvantage of the procedure oriented programming is that there is no data security. Okay, there is no data security. Okay, as we can declare the data globally with the help of global variable, then which function is accessing that global data and which function is updating that data, that we cannot you can say that we cannot monitor or that we cannot control. Okay, any functions can access that data and any function can modify that data. Okay, so there is the chances of the error in the data updation. Okay, so that is the disadvantage you can say in the procedure oriented programming. The next one is nothing but the, as you can see the diagram, see there is a global data with the main function and local data as well. Then the function A, function B, function C, function D and function E. Okay, these are the 6 functions in the one program. This is the structure of procedure oriented programming. As you can see, in main function the local data as well as global data are declared. Okay, the local data in the main function is accessible to the main function only, and the global data as well the main function can access. Okay, from main function we have called the function A, function B and function C. Okay, 3 functions can call the data from the main function. Okay, the main the function A, function B and function C as also having the local data in it. Okay, so the access to the local data in function A is accessible to only function A. Okay, the local data in function A is not accessible to the local function B. Okay, but the function A can access the global data from the main function. Okay, again from the function A the function D is calling. Okay, and the function D is also having the local data. That means what, the function D is having local data as well. Okay, the data inside the function D is accessible to only the function D. No other functions is accessible to that data which are inside the local function D. Okay, that means what, the function D can access the data from the function A as well as the function main function. Okay, this is the hierarchy. Okay, so this is nothing but the procedure oriented programming, and opposite to that is nothing but the object oriented programming. So as we have seen that in procedure oriented programming the significance is given to the procedure and the functions. Opposite to that is in object oriented programming. Okay, so what is in object oriented, what happens in object oriented programming, the significance is given to the objects mainly. The here important term is nothing but the object. Okay, and what do you mean by object? Object is nothing but the real life entity which is in the real world that we can see through our eyes. Anything that we can see through our eyes is nothing but the object. Okay, that is nothing but the object. Okay, so in object oriented programming the significance is given to the object. Okay, not to the functions. Then second important features in the object oriented programming are nothing but the data of the object is binded into that particular function. Okay, as you can see in the diagram, you can see the object A, object B, object C. There are 3 objects, and in the object you can see the data and the function is there. It means what, object A is containing data as well as the function, object B is containing data as well as the function, object C is containing data as well as the function. That means what, object A data and function is accessible to only that particular object, means the data and the functions which are inside the object A is not accessible to the others outside the objects. Okay, if one object want to communicate with the another objects, they can communicate. Okay, but the more security is given to the object uh, uh, oriented programming to the data. Okay, that means I want to say that the more security is given to the data instead of the more security is given to the data in the object oriented programming. Okay, so as you can see in the figure, if suppose object A wants to communicate with the object B, then the functions are communicating, not the data. Okay, data is not accessible, through the functions they are communicating, but data is accessible to only the functions which are inside that particular object. Okay, so that is the object oriented programming. Okay, next feature of object oriented programming is what, object oriented programming follows the bottom up approach. Okay, so whereas the procedure oriented programming follows the top down approach. Bottom up approach and top down approach means what, in procedure oriented programming the instructions are executed step by step. Okay, one instruction after the another instruction. The main function we are writing the initially, and then we are going executing the next instruction. That means from top to bottom we are executing one instruction after the another instruction. That is a top down approach. Bottom up approach means what, we are executing the instruction from bottom to top. Okay, from bottom to top. That is nothing but the object oriented programming. Okay, so if we want to summarize the difference between the procedure oriented programming and object oriented programming, then we can say that in procedure oriented programming, the more we can say significance is given to the procedure and the functions, whereas in object oriented programming the more significance is given to the objects. Okay, in procedure oriented programming the big task is divided into the small tasks. In object oriented programming is divided into the parts called as object. The task is divided into the different parts or the sub task, that is nothing but the object. Whereas in procedure oriented programming follows the top down approach, in object oriented programming follows the bottom up approach. Example of procedure oriented programming is nothing but the C language. Okay, C, Fortran, Pascal is the example of procedure oriented programming, and whereas the object oriented programming, C++, Java, C Sharp, these are the example of object oriented programming. Okay, and the last, where the object oriented programming is used. Okay, the you can see the real life, if you want to see the real life example of the object oriented programming where we are using, is nothing but the different versions that we are installing in our mobile application. Okay, once we have installed any application in our mobile, again from after 2-3 months or after 6 months, the new release is coming, the new version of application is coming. That means what? Whether that the uh, CEO of that application or the vendor of that owner of that application is developing new code, no, vendor of owner of that application is just adding the new features into the already written code and releasing the new version of that application. Okay, so that is a use of, or that is the main application of object oriented programming. As again, if you see the example of operating system, okay, initially we are using the Windows 98, then we were using the Windows 2000, then Windows 11, Windows 10, different operating system we are using. It means what? We are not writing the new code for the language, for the operating system. Okay, we just adding the new feature in the already written language, and we are developing the new version of the software. Okay, so these are the different applications. As you can see, the real-time system design, object oriented database. Okay, then AI and expert system. In AI and expert system, we can use the object oriented programming for making a decision support system and automation. We are using the object oriented programming. For user interface design such as Windows menu, we are using the object oriented programming. So everywhere we are using the object oriented programming. That is a use application area where we can use the object oriented programming. Okay, that's all about this lecture. Thank you.